What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Elevate Your Grind, brought to you by the Cannabis Lab. I'm your host, Todd Rosales, and we have an extremely special episode for you today. I'm joined by my guest today, one of the most, call it infamous cannabis smugglers in history, but also one of the most infamous race car drivers in history, and now one of the most infamous cannabis advocates in the country, Randy Lanier. Randy, thank you for joining me.
Welcome, and thank you for having me. And I'm happy to be here to pick about whatever you want to talk about.
Randy, you spent 27 years in jail. Why are they making you suffer through this podcast?
The 27 years was something that I had to go through to get to where I'm at right now.
Sure.
And that's how struggles and hardships come about for reasons we don't know at the time. But maybe if we fortunate enough to figure it out before we move on and transition to another lifestyle, we'll figure out why it is we had to go through these struggles and hardships. And prohibition is one of the struggles and hardships that shouldn't be happening to these many families.
Yeah. And so before we started recording, I was talking about your story and the things that you accomplished. And, you know, if we look at the way that the laws and regulations are today, yes, there's no international commerce with cannabis, but at the end of the day, you were running a cannabis business that was so successful that you were able to fund a racing career with it, which is what you're ultimately passionate about, right? That's an incredible feat. So, you know, one of the themes that I'm always in tune with is cannabis being demonized as something that makes people lazy and makes them not want to work. In theory, and I say this in the kindest way, you were smart enough to outsmart what was supposedly one of the toughest governments in the entire world. I don't see that being a lazy stoner mentality there. I think you had to be pretty clever to pull off some of the things that you did.
Well, thank you. But the laziness stoner thing, I think, basically is the propaganda that's been put out for decades.
Sure.
And now they're understanding why you see that the plant does that to certain people. It's due to the strains, to genetic makeups of that particular strain.
Mm-hmm.
So you can get strains that maybe comatose you and lock you down on the bed, or you can get strains that maybe make you want to do yoga or write a novel or whatever it is that you're passionate about.
Sure. I'm going to do things a little bit backwards. I want to talk about the things that we're here to promote today, the comedy show, the book and all that, because I don't want to have to come back to something after we go through your story because it's so good. So part of the reason that you're here today is because there's a comedy show that you're helping promote for Freedom Grow. It is here at the Boca Black Box in Boca Raton, Florida, called Hits and Giggles. I'm really excited about it. The Boca Black Box has actually been there for like 20 years, maybe longer. It used to be the Boca Nuts Comedy Club, then it was the New York Comedy Club, now it's the Boca Black Box. I grew up going there. That's the first time I saw stand-up comedy and fell in love with it. So the fact that you guys are choosing that venue is very near and dear to my heart. I'm excited about this event. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
This is going to be an outstanding event. I'm excited. That whole team of Freedom Grow, which is freedomgrow.org. It's a nonprofit company, organization that's all volunteers. We do everything through donations, and we have a wish program. And our wish program is we grant wishes to the 200 plus prisoners that we have. Currently have 6 women. And through that program, we're constantly giving wishes, granting wishes. So we need a kind of a streaming income to help support the families. Sure. Because the victims are the children. Mm-hmm. Children and the families that are getting separated from the men and women that are currently incarcerated. And it shows that prohibition doesn't work and the families suffer. And unfortunately, it's a lot of marginalized families that are going through these hardships. So Freedom Grow is all about supporting them, helping them in the time of the need that they're in right now. So we got this event, Hits and Giggles with Jeff Dye. It's going to be a blast. It's going to be a big party, and all the proceeds are going to Freedom Grow to support the cannabis prisoners and their families.
That's awesome, man. I'm a huge fan of Jeff Dye. He is a hilarious comedian. I think this is going to be a great event. How many minutes are you doing up there? 5? Type 5?
I might be up there for a few minutes, kind of patronizing Freedom Grow, and I want to thank all the sponsors. We got a ton of good sponsors that I'm excited to announce here, from Fluent dispensaries to Freedom Town Holdings to Cookies. I'm Randy Lanier from the Netflix series Bad Sport. This is Hits and Giggles.
We do anything we want. You ever thought about that? We do anything. We just do all the drugs. Some countries have actual problems. That's when I'm wrong. I've been over 50 countries. Some countries I'm like, why are you grumpy? And they're like, we need water.
Freedom Grow is a non-profit organization that's all volunteers. Everything we do is for the cannabis prisoners and their families. Which camera am I looking at?
Doesn't matter.
I'm Randy Lanier and this is Jackass.
Some people might hear me say this and go, well, it's easy for this guy to be happy. He's a straight white male with money and a big dick. You know, I hear you. I know.
While we're spreading the message, we're also bringing goodness to the heart. We're bringing laughter to the community. I know it's no joke. I spent 27 years in the cages. You know, we're all about wanting to spread the message and educate. Yeah, there's too many people still locked up.
That's awesome, man. I'm really looking forward to the comedy show. You know, one of the things that I've noticed about folks, well, let's kind of talk about this. When you went away, you were supposedly doing life in prison. Did you ever think that you were going to get out? Did you ever lose that hope, or did you ever come to it's like, this is where I am? So if I remember correctly, at the end of the first Smoke of the Day podcast, you clarified that it wasn't a pardon. It was a policy that was put forth to look at the cases of all nonviolent offenders.
It was a mixture of the perfect storm, if I may tell you that. There was a whole lot going on with President Obama giving a directive down to the U.S. Justice Department to look at the long, lengthy prisoners that are nonviolent, that are doing long, lengthy prison sentences. And he wanted to thin out the prison population. So that was his way. He gave a directive to the Justice Department. So that was one of the little puzzle pieces.
Sure.
And the other puzzle piece was several years prior, I had found out through a Senate investigative report that a property, a casino that I was involved with, had been sold to an organized crime family. And the U.S. Marshals had profited from this sale of this casino.
You probably thought, shit, I could have done that myself.
So they have things that are in place for sales of drug forfeited properties to be dealt with. So it's no kickbacks, or the people that owned it illegally does not come back and own it again. But they didn't vet the buyer. And they ended up keeping a percentage of the casino for 9 years and made a ton of money. And we became aware of it 19 years, 6 months into my bit. And we started a lawsuit concerning the forfeited proceeds that got generated from the sale of the casino.
So you never stopped working on trying to get out of there?
No. When I went into prison, I was in my early 30s. I was kind of full of myself. So I figured the courts couldn't get me out. I would figure out a way to get myself out one way or another. And so for about 18 years, I really did plot and plan a little bit on ways to get out of the prison, either through the courts or ways that I could develop myself.
I think that paid off, man, because you're sitting here. And I got to be honest with you, you know, a lot of people in your situation, and we've seen it, they get out and they fall right back into the life. You know, being on the inside, when you started seeing the legalization of cannabis, obviously that's got to make you feel good, because I'm sure you still had friends that were doing it, that had a path out where they didn't have to look over their shoulder anymore. But also you realize when you get out, you can essentially do what you did before, just not go to jail for it again. So you never had to really worry about, I mean, maybe you did, but falling back into that life or trying to figure out how to do something else, like a chain of car washes or something like that.
When I first went in, I was sentenced to the remaining balance of my natural life. I was given natural death, life with no parole. This is for a case that they never found any of the weed. It's a dry case. I smuggled hundreds of tons of cannabis into the country, but they never found any of the merchandise. So I was thinking the whole time that maybe in my appeals, I would get some relief. That didn't pan out. So I continued to look at other ways to get my release. And fortunately, down the road with Obama coming about with the directive of releasing and thinning out the prison system and the handling of the forfeited property, it came to make a perfect storm for me to get my release on 2014. Getting back into a lifestyle of illegal drug activity was not something that I wanted to be a part of, but it's crazy how this energy works, because now, 1 year ago, I was awarded a social equity license to cultivate cannabis in the state of New Jersey.
That's nuts to me. I mean, it's great. It's great. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I think it's great that you're able to come out and do what you did prior, but legally, and not have to look over your back, because you know, I watched the interviews and I want to get into it, but you know, you're going down to Colombia and buying hillsides of cannabis, but you also have to know that it's top quality. You know, you and Mark were looking earlier and you were able to tell where, you know, how it was cultivated and everything else by looking at the bud structure, which is something I can't do. But you come out and you have this vast knowledge that you've put in more than your 10,000 hours for. It's not like you have to come out and say, okay, I have to go sell insurance or figure out how to do something else. I know you now have the social equity license where you can cultivate cannabis and use your years of experience and actually make a living and make a positive impact on society now.
When I first come out, though, I didn't get into the cannabis space. I got into substance abuse treatment center.
Okay.
So for 4.5 years, I was a behavioral health technician, working with a lot of Afghanistan veterans and people that had struggles with alcohol
Down
abuse.
in Florida
Here in South Florida.
My wife was an addiction counselor at one of the places in Del Rey, so I've learned a lot about that.
I worked in Del Rey
nice.
at a place called Epiphany.
Okay.
So so when I first come out, I didn't get back into the cannabis space. Got involved in the behavioral health part of substance abuse, working as a mentor, behavioral health technician. And it's crazy how this energy puts you in opportunities, because my job was to teach meditation at the beach at sunrise. And I thought, how lucky and blessed am I to be at sunrise teaching meditation to people that can really maybe get something out of it. And it was a big learning process for doing that.
Before you went in, were you the same person as far as trying to be helpful and be of service to other people? I mean, you know, obviously people look at what you did and, you know, you were a race car driver, you were a smuggler, you were doing things of, I don't want to say selfish, but a lot of attention towards you. One, not so much the race car driver. Yes. Were you the same person as far as helping the others around you and being of service to people and trying to make lives better? Because it seems like since you've been out, you know, between Freedom Grow, doing the addiction counseling as well, that's really where you want your life to be, is being of service to others.
So I'm completely different, change. Every one of us on this planet, we're not the same today as we were yesterday. We're constantly changing. Everything changes, everything but one thing. And that's the energy that created us all. It's the only thing that's eternal, the only thing that never changes. That's a whole nother topic. But throughout my terms of the joint, it took a couple of decades for me to really notice the change of wanting to be of service or help others. And I went through some issues in the joint. My last 9 years, I was a volunteer suicide companion. For 4 hours a day, I listened to hundreds and hundreds of men for 9 years. These are people that tried to take their lives. And some of them would talk and some of them wouldn't. And so that is one of the things that changed me, because how blessed am I to sit here and be talking to someone who felt so shitty about their life that they wanted to take their life.
Yeah.
And, or maybe they had no hope, or maybe they had nobody to go out to. A lot of these people were people that were getting short to the door. Some of them have done 32 years, some of them have done 6 years, or some of them had just come into prison. So in speaking with these men and really trying to talk to them in a way that we all have hope. Everything we have, everything we need right inside.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times people can get into their mind and become what I call a reactive mind instead of a responsive mind. And it takes practice to develop that skill to not be a reactive mind.
I know that's not easy stuff to do and stuff to deal with, like I said, my wife comes from the addiction world as far as counseling, and she's told me stories upon stories. It's really from the beginning of our relationship, we'd sit on our balcony, I'd listen, and talking about the suicide counseling stuff. You said that you're a completely different person than when you went in. Did you realize a lot of this is deep, profound stuff, right? And I think we're in a day and age now where it's starting to come to the light, and people like you were talking about it. There are other people talking about it, but you're right. We're expected to go through life and be these, at least in the public eye, these perfect vessels. Nothing's wrong with us. And that's the life that everyone tries to project on the outside, is that everything is going well and they have it under control all the time. But in the reality is, when you actually sit and talk to people, you realize that nobody knows what the fuck they're doing. We're all trying to figure it out.
We control nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times people do have control issues.
No.
So that's one of the big things, is learning to let things go, have an acceptance.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time to have acceptance that maybe this is me in this life sentence that I'm doing. So I took that and started changing it for a path of goodness, helping others.
I wish we could find a way for people to have, because I feel like most people believe that they can learn by digesting information, but truly most people learn by experience. And it takes, unfortunately, some people to hit rock bottom, some people to have a mishap in their lives, some people to go away, for them to realize what their path in life is. And I wish there was a way where we can do that for people without having that negative impact.
So there's a way. You don't have to hit rock bottom every time to find the better in you, or to come out of it with a better understanding of what change is. You don't have to hit rock bottom. And it's really simple. But yet we get so caught up in living the life that we want to live for us that we don't consider living a mindful life. And that's where it starts, is living a mindful life. Throughout the day, 6, 8 times, a dozen times, take a moment, step back and be the observer of what it is that you're thinking, what it is you want to do, what it is you're feeling. Doing that a dozen times a day will start bringing mindfulness into your life. You can be mindful walking to the water fountain about what it is you just encountered, how much you want to maybe wish that person was what, you could help. But there's ways to, so you don't have to hit rock bottom. Unfortunately, a lot of us have to hit a rock bottom to maybe go within and do the internal work. And we don't have to. Developing to live a mindful life is the key.
This is incredible, man. And I can stay on this topic for a while, but I want to go back into your past and your story, because it, I want people to understand the journey. And hopefully, I'm assuming that they've seen your story on First Smoke of the Day or on the Netflix series. Of course, go buy the book.
You got a Netflix show.
It is an amazing episode. I will say the guys at First Smoke of the Day did a great job interviewing you as well, too. I'm a big fan of theirs. But tell me, growing up, because all of a sudden you've got, again, in theory, if we take the illegalities out of it, you became an all-star in 2 worlds, right? And in one world, you were kind of the Tiger Woods or the Babe Ruth. The other one, you were on your way to becoming a phenomenal race car driver as well. And some of the races that you got to participate in are probably bucket lists for racers. Take me back to when you were young. I know you're from Virginia, but you started getting into cannabis in Florida. Where do you see your life? Maybe earlier. I don't know. That's just what I got.
I got into cannabis when I was 14 years old.
Okay. What brought you to it? What was it about cannabis?
All my friends were smoking it. So, I first said no, and then I started smoking it, and just took off from there. I was smoking it since 1968, before I knew it was medicine, before anybody really knew it was medicine.
Was there anything about the experience that you thought really helped you or helped your life or made you feel better or was able to help you focus on something? What was it, just that you felt good when you smoked it?
I felt good when I smoked it. As you know, different strains make you, one might be a mind strain that help you think, or one might help you relax. And I just liked it.
So let me compare my experience to why, like, you talk about strains in the education, and that's where I am today. I love going into a dispensary or looking at a menu, going through leafly, figuring out the strains I like, the lineage, where they came from, the effects, the terpene profiles. But it took me some time to get there. So late in life, I didn't start smoking until I was like 22, 23 regularly. I had smoked before then. But for me, I'm the dude from Grandma's Boy, if you remember him. Like, just give me a bag of weed and I'm gonna smoke it, right? I got the deer shit, I got the Frankenstein shit, I got the bling. Whatever it is, I never believed the guy I was buying it from, whatever it was. I never cared. I never looked it up. And then I went out 2015 to a dispensary and I smoked a haze or one of those sativa strains for the first time. And I'm like, this is a completely different experience. I fucking love this, right? So I grew up in a time with the dare kids just don't do drugs at all. So I really didn't touch it. I was student athlete at the time. I only made it through high school. So that is whatever it is. But I never really got into the education of weed until really the legal industry came around and it was more widely available. When back then in the 60s and 70s, when you were looking into weed, or were strains really a thing back then? Was there a little bit more education from the underground? Like, and maybe I missed it because of the world that I come from. I'm just curious to know, was that always part of it, or was it sometimes just, hey man, give me a bag of weed?
There was a lot of different weeds, from whether it was Acapulco Gold, Jamaican, Collie buds, Belize weed, Thai sticks. Colombians started bringing it in. So the strains were just from different land masses, different where they was grown.
Got it.
We didn't have all the names that other than the Hawaiian Kona buds, and we had names, but now I come out and there's so many strains I've never heard of. And the genetic profile has been done over and over and over so much that I don't know. Weed seems to be a little different.
Weed to me is definitely different. I'll be honest, like, they always talk about, oh, it's so strong these days. It's so strong these days. It's gotten to a point from when I started smoking to now. I'm like, I'm one of those people now where I'm like, damn, it is fucking strong. Like Jungle Boys came out with like a 30, and I shouldn't say this on camera. I have a hard time believing that some of these 38, 39% strains are really that, because the plant would be goo at that point. But, some of these 30 plus strains, and call me a wimp, like I'd rather just smoke more weed than smoke the strong ones.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat with that. I'd like to see it taken back to really some really good sun-grown, organic grown weed that is a little bit more different than the strong strains that we see.
So on that note, how do you progress from someone who just starts becoming a fan of weed into selling weed, into selling more weed, into bringing in shipping containers?
Well, everything changes. So I first got into it to sell weed and get to smoke my weed for free. That's basically how most of the weed dealers started back then. Anyway, it wasn't just a money thing. It was, you get to sell your weed and you smoke for free. And that's how it developed. And the demand was so thick in the late 60s, early 70s that, and it is today too. I mean, look, there's 39 states that's legal in one way or another, medical or adult use. I think 29 maybe.
Possibly. I just estimate.
Yeah, medically, maybe 29 of them, but it just developed over time as the demand kept building and the clientele kept coming. To keep up with the demand, I figured out ways to have the supply to keep up with the demand.
Figured out ways to have some significant supply coming in from far away. So when you started, was it just finding people more locally here to get smaller quantities from, and then as demand grew, you're like, shit, we've got to cut out the middleman? How does that, like, is it really just the natural progression of a normal business where the demand started getting bigger and you just had to figure out where to source it from?
Growing up here in South Florida, I got to meet a lot of the smugglers that needed help in getting their loads in. And one of my first boats I acquired was a 27-foot Magnum. So that led me into offloading for a lot of other drug smugglers.
Got it.
And so that evolved with a lot of connections, and I started distributing their loads. And, you know, one thing would grow from another. You meet people and share connections. And
How old were you at this time? About.
I started smuggling weed from the Bahamas when I was 19 years old.
And in conjunction with the racing career, where were you as far, when did you get the racing bug where you knew that's something that you wanted to do?
Yeah. In my early 20s, I wanted to, I was a race fan.
Okay.
I'd go to all the racing. By 24, I bought my first race car, Porsche 356.
So the boat and the race car, are these both funded by weed at this point?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Business was good.
Business is good. And, you know, I see the weed business, the plant is such a healing plant, and it has so many qualities that are so good for us. And I see all these states that are stumbling because of saturation and greed and so forth from all these states that passes legalization. All they see is taxes, taxes, taxes. And so they screw it up with the federal government, for example, with the 280 East tax structure. All that does is strangle all these people, these entrepreneurs that want to do good, but yet they have such a hard time getting over these hurdles.
And if they would restructure it, maybe they'd actually get paid the taxes that are owed to them.
Sure. I think we're going to see some safe banking coming along the
I hope so.
The line soon.
So you get to this point and you know, you don't have to name names or anything else like that, but do you meet someone who kind of mentors you through this process, right? Because there is no blueprint for what you're the life that you're about to go into. I mean, maybe there is, but it's not one's one that's covered up more than anything else, where, you know, you're 19, you're buying a boat, you're 24, you're buying a race car, and people may or may not know what you do for a living, including the government. How do you make it so that you stay under the radar with these things as this kid from Florida?
Well, trying to stay on the radar, I kind of limited the people that I associated with. And once I got into the racing, I didn't let the people in the racing world know what I was doing other than the people that worked for me. So I tried to keep that underneath the radar. And I told my crew, don't be talking about nothing we do. You got to keep your mouth shut about anything. So trying to be picky with the people that worked for me to make sure that they was closed mouth was one of the ways I tried to keep out from underneath the radar.
Sure. As you progressed in your racing career, did you worry that it was going to expose what you were doing? Because you're more now in the public eye. I mean, 1986 IndyCar Rookie of the Year, it's not something that doesn't get press.
It came to my attention that maybe I should start doing some things with the cash and the money to show where I'm putting it at and how I'm affording all that, what it is that I've got going on in the racing world. So I started buying real estate and setting up front companies and offshore companies to kind of laundry my money through to buy these real estates to help flush out my racing team.
And is this something that you have to figure out on your own, or like, is there someone who's like, listen, man, you getting some heat on you, you got to start structuring things?
I think anybody that's inquisitive can kind of figure it out. It's good to, when you're in a space where people are doing illegal activities, you learn just from the activities and how other people are doing certain things, and you meet certain connections. You might go to Switzerland and meet a banker, or he might introduce you to a broker or something. So you meet people that can help you facilitate what it is that you need to get done without red flags.
So at the end of the day, and I don't mean to simplify this, but it's very similar to the world of business as far as just finding people along your journey to get you to the next step. I mean, the only difference here is, you know, people don't like it. The people in charge don't like it.
So the saying is true. Show me who you hang out with and I show you who you are. So if you're hanging out with bankers, race car drivers, drug smugglers, it's probably in there in the mix is something that you're doing similar.
Got it. So you have the career, and at any point when you started getting bigger and bigger, did you ever get to a point where you're like, this is enough, I just want to focus on
I
racing?
got to that point. It was too late.
Got
My
it.
last load, I was at that point. There's no more. I had got the DEA follow me. I got the FBI follow me. I've gotten some people that were a couple of people removed that had gotten arrested, and they were telling everything that they knew. And I knew I was being investigated. I had lawyers dealing with the FBI in the state of Illinois trying to negotiate a plea bargain, which I could never come to. They wanted too much time and cooperation. And it was something that I was ready to give them a good amount of time. I've offered to turn myself in for 25-year prison sentence, but no cooperation. And they were stuck on cooperating. So I took the time then to exit stage left. And that's a whole nother story.
Yeah, potentially get into that, but it's, to me, just living this double life of trying to make it in racing because you're passionate about it, and then also having the passion for cannabis, knowing that that can fund the other life. You know, was that, do you think if you didn't find racing, if you just found, if it was really just the cannabis smuggling, and you can put up a front that you're a real estate investor and everything else, and you didn't have this public eye, then maybe it would have went on for a little bit longer, or you could have even skirted getting caught?
The smuggling was exciting and adventurous, and it's thrilling to organize and set up an operation.
Sure.
And then to pull it off and get paid big bucks, you feel like you're on top of the world. So how long would have it went? I don't know. You know, it didn't happen. So I got pinched, I got indicted, and got sentenced to life. And I hate to say this, but it was probably what I needed at the time.
Yeah.
Because you asked me earlier if I was a man of wanting to be of service to others. At that time, no, I wasn't. I was doing me, whether I was racing or smuggling or doing something with my crew. You can become self-centered sometimes in endeavors that create such large monetary benefits.
Yeah.
And it can take you down some paths of power hungry shit. And, you know, you see a lot of people that walk that path and losing everything, hitting rock bottom, going to prison, getting a life sentence, spending years in solitary confinement. I spent 7 years out of 27 years. I spent 7 in the hole. My longest stint was 2 years. And during those times, it actually was good for me because I did the internal work through the meditation and really understanding that I'm good no matter where I'm at. If they never open that steel door right there and my food keeps coming through that slot, 1 year, 2 years, every day of the week, you got a little 7x10 foot cell where you're doing your push-ups, you're doing your sit-ups, you're doing your handstand push-ups, whatever it is that you're doing. You got everything you need right there. And I come to the understanding that if that door never opens, I'm good. Guess what? I can study chess. I can take my game to a whole nother level, which I did. I taught myself Tai Chi. You know, I became a yoga instructor. I picked up a paintbrush and started drawing and painting. These are things I may have never done if I had not went to the joint. So it was a humbling experience, a learning experience, and it was probably what I needed to get me where I'm at now, helping 200 plus prisoners, 156 children every day of the week that we're granting wishes. And that is a great feeling.
I imagine you get to a point where you want to get out and you look and maybe you have some expenses or something coming up and you're like, I know I can cover this if I just do it one more time. And I don't know how else to get that kind of money that quickly. Because I can see that, and I don't even say that just from a smuggling standpoint. I see a lot of people who are professionals that might be laid off from a job, or they know how to do something, one thing really, really well. And they know if they can do that, they can cover whatever it is coming up. unfortunately for some people, it is a criminal activity, and you want to get out and you don't want to do it again. But you know, if you can just get past this last one, then you're done. And you think that happens, but it's just something else comes up, and you've established this life that you only know one way to fund it. I feel like, and again, from the conversation that we've had, that when they stripped all that away from you, like you just said, and you had that 7 by 10 foot cell, having the mental capacity, and it doesn't surprise me considering the things that you've accomplished, to say, you know what, this is all I need and I can be content. They couldn't break you, and you came out the person that you are now. Whereas I feel like some weaker people would be in there and go nuts, and maybe they wouldn't come out the other side with wanting to be of service. And I feel like, you know, that challenge that they put in front of you was, you're going to come out of this a better or worse man, and hopefully you're a better. And I'm not saying that that's what we need to do to people by any stretch of the imagination. It's just where you happen to end up. And I think, you know, leveraging all this intelligence that you've had, all this life experience that you've had, you were able to figure out what's the best way to move forward.
A lot of people that go to the joint, and sad to say, some of them deserve it. There's a lot of people that I met in there that's the spot what maybe they should stay. Unfortunately, many of them don't find themselves or how to be really productive and be of service, and they get into a path of violence. It's humbling to see human beings have so little disregard for human life. And when it's around you like that, it wakes your ass up. And if you're fortunate enough to say, well, look, I can do better. I can be better than this today. Tomorrow I can be better the next day.
The one thing that I truly love to see, and I don't know why it's this particular group of people that do it, but folks like yourself, Luke Scarmazzo, you know, Sparky Rose that I know, folks that were nonviolent cannabis offenders that have now gotten out and maybe didn't expect to get out. One of the first things you all do is turn around and say, we've got to help everybody else because they shouldn't be in there. And I don't know if the greater prison community is like that. I don't know if people who get out for robbery and reformed or anything else, they get out and say, hey, I've got to help everyone back because I went through this. It's incredible to see nonviolent cannabis offenders like you and Luke and the others come out and say, we've got so many more people that we need to advocate for. And it's not even like a question. There's not even one of you that's kind of flaky about it, at least the ones that I've seen. Now, having said that, most of the ones I'm familiar with, the ones that go and advocate, but it seems like a pretty general consensus across the board.
Yeah. The weed people that you meet in the joint are probably the nicest people that you come across.
Mm-hmm.
They're nonviolent. And it really shows you that prohibition doesn't work. And the victims are the children and the wives and the sisters and the families of these people that are incarcerated. So to be in the space to be able to help is a blessing. Every day I feel how blessed am I to contribute to maybe someone's mind frame today, someone's happiness, to really help others that are in an unfortunate situation like this. I'm blessed. Sure. And you know, to talk to these people, and then when they get out, to be able to have maybe a little program for a reentry to uplift them once they get out, to bless them with a 420 day when they come home, whether they're in a halfway house or their house. The president needs to release all these cannabis prisoners. They're more productive in society than they are in a prison cell. And it's sad that because it multiplied by 100, because you got all the family members that are suffering and going through the hardships. And it's trauma to them to lose a loved one, because when one of them gets locked up, they're tripping the whole time, trying to figure out how to pay the bills, how to help to look out for their loved one that's in the joint.
I mean, it might even be harder because it's almost like that person has passed away, but they're still here. You can't access them.
They're still here. And a lot of the prisons, and the camps and the lows and the mediums, they're a little safer. But when you get into maximum security prisons, they're violent, a whole lot more violent than the ones below them. So, and unfortunately, a lot of our cannabis prisoners that are still locked up are in a high security prison, and it shouldn't be, they shouldn't be in any prison, let alone a maximum security penitentiary. So, you know, we support these prisoners. We get letters signed. I think I brought a letter.
You did,
we
right
get
here.
letters signed. Check out freedomgrow.org. We get letters signed asking the president to release the hundreds of prisoners that are nonviolent cannabis prisoners. And we believe it shouldn't be happening. And we're here to ask for your support. Come out and check out Hits and Giggles. And, you know, I want to give a shout out to all of our sponsors too.
Yeah.
I can't shout out enough for Fluent, Freedom Town Holdings, Cookies. I want to just say thank you for coming aboard. Murray Pops, thank you. Just all the people that are, all the volunteers that are here to help us spread the awareness, because by supporting us, freedomgrow.org, you're supporting the families that are still going through prohibition. And everyone might be out here smoking weed, laughing and joking, going to comedy shows, but we have an opportunity to do that and to give back to the communities, to give back. And these communities are nationwide. They're not just in one state. They have prisoners all through these states. So by supporting us at this event, Freedom Grow, Hits and Giggles, you'll be supporting the children and the families of these prisoners, because all the profits are going back
Thursday,
to families.
June 15th. What time does it start?
Thursday, June
starts
15th.
At 8.
We got a VIP lounge from 6 to 8. Come check it out. And we got the show starts at 8 p.m. with Jeff Dye.
Awesome. I know, again, Jeff Dye is hilarious. Now, Randy, typically I wouldn't let someone wear an orange and blue hat on the show with the words FL on it, just because to me it reminds me of the Florida Gators, and I'm a Florida State alum. A little beef there, but I know they're a sponsor of the show, so I think we'll allow it this time. Randy, you know, there's so much more that I can talk to you about, but I know you've done a million interviews. Your story is out there. I wanted to talk to you, get to know you a little bit more, think of some of the things that you're doing. I love this person that you've become, because I love your old, you know, as a guy, as any kind of dude, you look at you and it's a movie, right? You lived a movie your whole life, and unfortunately you paid the ultimate price. And, you know, most people will look at you and glorify what you did in the past, and hey, it was fun and you did what you did. But I think there needs to be people who glorify what you're doing now.
Thank you.
Because you are saying, you're helping people say, hey, listen, I did what I did, but this is what I'm trying to do now. And there's a lot of people that we need to help. The addiction thing, the suicide thing, being in the cannabis industry, helping the nonviolent offenders. Maybe one day if we get a president that can read, he'll actually do the letters and do something about it, but we'll see.
Yeah.
So it's
Thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show.
Before I dip, what I'm doing now, just dropped this book, Survival of the Fastest. And this is what's amazing. I dropped this book in August the 2nd. It went into the Barnes and Nobles, and it's on Amazon.com. It became a bestseller really quick on Amazon within 1 week.
That's awesome.
And it's blowing my mind. And I just optioned the rights to this book for a full feature film.
Beautiful.
Amazing story. Like
Tom Cruise is going to play you?
Energy no. No. This energy keeps putting opportunities in my path. And I just got notified by the publishing company 2 days ago that the book has been nominated as a finalist for what's called the Motor Press Guild Award.
That's beautiful.
It's the best book of the year. It's the finalist. It's one of 3 books for the year of 2022. Voted to be one of the best books of the year, and hopefully they'll announce the winner today at 6 p.m.
That's awesome. I am curious, when they make the movie of you, who would you like to play you?
I don't know.
Oh man.
You know, there's been several people that they're looking at, and right now they have a writer's strike going on.
Yep.
And that has like complicated the deal with the studio, because they were slow to attach a writer. So a writer cannot be attached right now because they're all on strikes.
Yeah.
So it's like, damn, man. So I'm sitting on idle, But hopefully within 6 months, this strike is over and we can continue to move forward with getting the screenplay written.
Well, man, hopefully we can grow this podcast in that time. So when you
Oh,
release
I'll
the
be back
movie,
on.
when you release the movie, we'll be on the
Nah.
PR tour. Randy.
Hey, don't forget about the props.
Oh, yeah,
Hey, we're here to burn it up. Come party.
absolutely.
June 15th.
June 15th,
Bring it on. It's lit.
Boca Black Box
Boca
in
Black
Boca
Box.
Raton, Florida, off Glades and the Turnpike. Get your tickets, Matt. What's the website for tickets? Is it just Boca Black Box? BocaBlackBox.com. June 15th, VIP lounge opens at 6 p.m. Folks, if you missed any part of this interview and you want to catch it again, you can go to youtube.com/elevateyourgrind. If you want to check out any of your other episodes, they're there on any of the podcast platforms, Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio. Folks, this has been another episode of Elevate Your Grind, and we're out.